Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're here, I'm guessing data is something you're at least a little curious about. Maybe you're even thinking, hey, could I be a data engineer? Well, today we're diving deep into a job overview that'll give you the rundown. Not just the what they do, but the why it matters so much now that, like, everything runs on data.
It's funny. People call data engineers the heart of a company's data setup, but even that doesn't quite get it. Like imagine Netflix, right?
Mm.
That algorithm, the thing that's all you might also like, that's totally built on what data engineers do. All the
Mm.
stuff you watch, they collect that, process it, feed it into the algorithm. No data engineers, no personalized recommendations, and Netflix wouldn't be nearly as cool.
Yeah, good point. It's not just behind the scenes stuff. They're actually shaping how we experience things.
Right. And it's bigger than just pipelines, too.
So it's not just moving data around. It's
And building the whole foundation a company needs to actually use its data. It has to
Mhm.
be accurate, accessible, ready to go when someone needs to make a decision.
So, like, they're setting the stage, kind of like an architect, but for data instead of buildings.
That's a good way to put it. They got to think about how the data flows, the different
Yeah.
systems, how it all connects. And once that's solid, then they can get to the core stuff, the ETL process.
ETL. Okay, break that down for us. What's that actually look like?
Imagine a company, they've got customer data from all over website, apps, stores, everywhere, right? So
Mhm.
all different formats, probably some mistakes in there too. Data engineers, they take that mess, clean it up, make it all consistent, then load it into a warehouse or database. That's where it becomes useful.
So it's like you've got this huge box of puzzle pieces all jumbled up. They come in and sort it out so you can actually start building the puzzle.
Exactly. And that sorting, that transforming, it can be super technical. They might write scripts to automate things, use algorithms to catch errors,
Yeah.
even build whole pipelines for data that's coming in live, like streaming.
Sounds pretty intense. You need to
Yeah.
know, like, serious programming and databases for that, right?
Oh, yeah. Languages like SQL, that's for working directly with the data. Then
Mm.
Python or Scala, that's more for building the pipelines, the automation, stuff like that.
Familiar names, but I'll admit, not my world. Steep learning curve if you're new to it.
It can be challenging, but there's tons of resources out there,
Yeah.
online courses, boot camps. You can even teach yourself a lot. Just got to start with the basics and build from there.
So it's not just being a code and whiz. You got to be a good problem solver too. Like figure stuff out as you go.
100%. And they don't work alone either. Data engineers, they're often working with data analysts, data scientists, all sorts of folks. Everyone brings their own expertise to make sure the data is actually useful, helps people make better decisions.
So less solo coding, more teamwork. Makes sense. But what are some of the challenges they might face working with all those different people?
One big one is communication. You got to explain these complicated data concepts to people who might not be techie at all. That takes skill. Being able to break it down into plain English.
So coding's not enough. Got to be a good communicator too. What else throws a wrench in the works for data engineers?
Well, data is not always nice and neat. Sometimes it's like social media feeds or sensor logs, no real structure to it. That takes special tools, different techniques to make sense of the mess. Things like natural language processing for text or time series analysis for the sensor stuff.
So got to be flexible, ready to handle whatever data gets thrown at them. Not a one-size-fits-all kind of job.
Nope, not at all.
Yeah.
And then there's the tech itself. It's always changing, new tools, new frameworks popping up all the
Mhm.
time. A good data engineer, they're always learning, trying out the new stuff.
No resting on your laurels in this field, huh? Gotta love learning.
Absolutely, that's key. But that's also part of what makes it so exciting. There's always something new to explore.
Good point. A lot of potential for growth. Definitely not a dead-end job.
Exactly. And speaking of practical stuff, what do these data engineers actually UEC to wrangle all this data?
Yeah, give me the tool rundown. What's in their arsenal?
Well, we mentioned SQL. That's their bread and butter for working with databases. Python or Scala, those are for building the pipelines and automating things. But then there's specific frameworks like Apache Kafka. That's for data streaming, real-time stuff. And tools like Apache Airflow. That's for managing those super complicated workflows.
Wow, whole lot of tools to master. Must be satisfying, though, when you get good at it and build these complex systems.
Oh, it is. And seeing how your work actually helps make better decisions, get real insights from the data, that's super rewarding.
Speaking of rewards, time to talk about the good stuff. Perks of being a data engineer. And I bet it goes beyond just the paycheck.
You bet it does. While the salary, 70 grand to over 150, that's nice, but it's more than that. For a lot of them, the real reward is solving tough problems, seeing the impact they have on the company.
Yeah, makes sense. It's not just about the money, it's about doing something cool, something that matters. But let's be real, a good salary is nothing to sneeze at either. I bet with data engineers being in such high demand, it's tough to stand out when you're applying for jobs.
Oh, for sure. It's competitive out there. One of the best things you can do is build a portfolio, projects, stuff that shows off what you can do. Could be personal projects. Maybe you contribute to some open source stuff. That way employers can actually see your skills, not just read about them on a resume.
So you got to walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Yeah.
What about formal education? Is a degree a must-have to even get your foot in the door?
A bachelor's in, say, computer science or IT, that's usually preferred, yeah. But it's not always a deal breaker. More and more people are getting into it through boot camps, online courses, that kind of thing.
Right.
What really matters is you get the core concepts and you can actually use them in real-world situations.
So it's more about can you do the work, less about where you learned it. That's good news for folks who maybe didn't take the traditional CS route.
Totally. And there's no shortage of resources if you want to learn, level up your skills. Online platforms like Coursera, Udemy, they've got tons of data engineering courses. Then you've got communities like Kaggle. You can compete in data science challenges, build up that portfolio.
Whole ecosystem for learning and development, that's cool. But with so much out there, where do you even begin? What are the must-have skills to focus on first?
If I had to pick one, it'd be SQL. That's the language of data, straight up. Any data engineer got to have a solid foundation in SQL. Writing queries, extracting data, manipulating it, joining tables from different databases, that's all SQL.
So SQL is like the key to the whole data kingdom.
You got it. Once you've got a good handle on SQL, then you can move on to programming languages like Python or Scala. Those are your workhorses for building those data pipelines, automating tasks, working with big data frameworks.
Speaking of big data frameworks, Hadoop, Spark, those names get thrown around a lot. Kind of intimidating, though. Steep learning curve.
They can be, yeah. But they're also super powerful, especially when you're dealing with massive amounts of data. Think of it this way. A regular database, it might choke if you try to make it process like a day's worth of Twitter data. But Hadoop and Spark, they can handle that no problem. They spread the data across multiple computers so it all gets processed way faster.
Ah, so it's like a team of supercomputers all working together to crunch those numbers. Pretty slick. Is that something you'd learn early on in your data engineering journey, those big data frameworks?
Depends, really. What are your goals? What kind of role are you aiming for? Some entry-level jobs, knowing the basics might be enough. But as you move up, yeah, understanding those tools becomes more and more important, especially if you're working with those huge data sets or data that's streaming in live.
It makes sense. Start with the fundamentals, then specialize as you go.
Exactly. And something that's becoming huge for data engineers these days, it's cloud computing. AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, they've all got these services and tools specifically for data. Managing it, analyzing it, even doing machine learning, it's all there.
So it's like a whole data playground all set up and ready to go.
Pretty much. And the cool thing about the cloud is it's scalable and it's cost effective. You can spin up a whole cluster of super powerful computers just for a specific task, then shut it down when you're done. Only pay for what you use.
Way better than having to set up your own data center, that's for sure. Sounds like cloud computing. That's a must-have skill for data engineers now.
For sure. And it's not just knowing how to use the platforms, it's understanding how cloud architecture works, the security aspects, how to keep costs down, all that.
Another layer of complexity, huh? Lot of skills to juggle in this field.
Definitely. And don't forget those soft skills we talked about earlier. Communication, problem solving, that constant drive to learn new stuff, those are just as important as the tech skills.
Yeah, you're right. Those are often what separates the good from the great, especially when you're working with so many different people.
100%. Being able to explain things clearly to non-techie folks, working well with your team, being able to roll with the punches when stuff changes, that's all crucial.
Sounds like a data engineer has to wear a lot of hats. Coder, architect, communicator, problem solver, all in one.
That's a good way to put it. And that's what makes it such an interesting job, so challenging and rewarding.
So skills, tools, challenges, rewards, we've covered a lot. But let's get down to brass tacks here. What's the job market actually look like for data engineers right now?
Well, good news for anyone thinking about this career path. The demand is through the roof. Companies everywhere, they're realizing how important data is, and they need people who can make sense of it all.
So it's a good time to be a data engineer. But with everyone looking for talent, how do you stand out from the crowd, land that dream job?
Networking, that's huge. Going to industry events, joining online communities, connecting with people in the field, that can open doors you wouldn't believe. And like we said, that portfolio, that's your ticket to showing what you can do.
So network, Build that portfolio, good advice. But all this talk about skills and jobs, it's got me wondering, what's it actually like to be a data engineer? What's a typical day look like?
It's not just sitting at a desk staring at code all day, that's for sure. It's a mix. Some days you're writing code, testing it. Other days you're talking to your team, figuring out why something broke. You might be building a whole new pipeline one day, then checking data quality the next, then explaining it all to the higher-ups the day after that.
Sounds like good variety, a mix of hands-on stuff and working with people. What would you say is the most rewarding part? Like, what makes data engineers tick?
I think for a lot of them, it's seeing their work actually make a difference. Like maybe they built a system that helps the marketing team target their ads better, or they help the finance people automate some boring reports. That kind of impact, it feels good.
Yeah, that makes sense. A sense of accomplishment. You're not just pushing bits around, you're making things happen. But what about the flip side? Those times when it's tough, frustrating, I bet there's a lot of that when you're dealing with complex systems.
Oh, absolutely. Trying to find a bug in a broken data pipeline, that can be a nightmare. But that's also kind of the fun of it. When you finally crack the code, get everything running smooth again, it's a rush.
So you got to be resilient, kind of enjoy the puzzle solving aspect of it.
For sure. Got to be able to handle ambiguity, think critically. But it's not all firefighting and troubleshooting. There's a creative side too, especially when you're designing new systems, coming up with new ways to use the data.
Right, so it's a mix of both. You need that analytical side, the data brain, but also the creative spark.
Exactly. And that's what makes this role so unique. It appeals to all sorts of people.
We've covered a lot, the skills, the tools, the ups and downs, but I want to bring it back to our listener for a sec. Why should they care about all this? What's the big picture here?
Think about it. Data is changing everything. How we shop, how we entertain ourselves, healthcare, even government. It's all running on data now. And data engineers, they're the ones making it work. They build the infrastructure, manage the flow, make sure it's accurate, accessible.
So they're like the unsung heroes of the digital age, making all this data magic happen behind the scenes.
Pretty much. I mean, think about it. Personalized recommendations on Netflix, self-driving cars, even medical breakthroughs, all that stuff relies on data. And data engineers are the ones who make it all possible.
Whoa, when you put it that way, it's kind of mind-blowing. They're not just working with data, they're shaping the future.
That's exactly it. And that's why understanding this role is so important. Even if you're not going to become a data engineer yourself, just knowing how this all works, it makes you appreciate the impact they have.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of data engineering, what's the one thing you want our listener to walk away with?
If you're fascinated by data, by how it's changing the world, well, this might just be the career for you. It's challenging, no doubt, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And it's only going to get bigger from here on out.
A career with tons of potential, a chance to be on the cutting edge. And on that note, we'll leave you with this. In this age of information, data engineers, they're the architects, the builders, the guardians of the data that powers our world. They take the chaos and make it make sense, find the insights that drive progress. So until next time, keep on learning, keep on exploring, and we'll see you in the Dataverse.